Monica James had just closed the biggest deal of her career, acquiring a luxury retail chain. But when she stepped into one of her newly purchased stores, she was denied service by a manager who judged her based on her appearance. The question is, what will happen when he discovers she's the new owner? Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from. Let's dive in. Monica James had always believed in the power of perseverance. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, she watched her parents struggle to provide for their family, working long hours at jobs that paid just enough to make ends meet. As a child, Monica had made a promise to herself that one day she would build a different life, not just for herself, but for those she cared about. Her dream wasn't just to be financially successful. She wanted to be in a position where she could inspire and uplift others. And now, after years of hard work and sacrifice, that dream had finally come true. After building her own small business from scratch, Monica had spent years cultivating her skills, navigating the world of entrepreneurship, and earning the respect of peers in her industry. She had faced many obstacles along the way: doubters, setbacks, and most notably, discrimination. But each challenge only fueled her desire to succeed even more. Recently, Monica had achieved a monumental victory. She had finalized the acquisition of an upscale retail chain that spanned across several states. It was a multi-million-dollar deal, and one that positioned her as a rising star in the business world. Monica was ecstatic about this new chapter in her life. The retail chain had long been known for its luxury goods, catering to affluent customers who sought exclusive items. It was a brand associated with high-class shopping experiences, something Monica had once only dreamed of being a part of. Now, not only was she a part of it, she owned it. The idea still felt surreal, and she couldn't wait to get her hands into the day-to-day operations of running such a prominent business. With the acquisition now official, Monica wanted to get a first-hand look at how the stores were operating under the radar. She decided to visit the flagship location in a nearby city unannounced, and without any of the staff knowing who she was. She believed in observing the business through the eyes of an ordinary customer, not as the boss. After all, how could she improve things if she didn't know how her stores treated the everyday shopper? Plus, Monica was someone who valued humility, even after achieving success. Dressed casually in jeans, a simple blouse, and comfortable flats, Monica pulled up to the store on a sunny afternoon. The building was an architectural masterpiece, its tall glass windows reflecting the bright blue sky. Inside, the displays showcased high-end fashion pieces, designer handbags, and gleaming jewelry, items that only a select few could afford, without a second thought. As Monica stepped out of her car, she felt a surge of excitement mixed with anticipation. This was the start of something big. Walking into the store, Monica was immediately struck by the beauty of the interior. The place exuded elegance, from the marble floors to the carefully arranged merchandise. Soft music played in the background, adding to the air of sophistication. A few well-dressed customers browsed the aisles, while attentive sales associates assisted them with poised professionalism. It was exactly the kind of experience Monica had envisioned for her business empire. But as she moved further into the store, her initial excitement was quickly replaced by a sense of unease. Behind the counter stood Mark Walters, the store's manager. Tall, lean, and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, Mark had the polished look of someone who took pride in his role. Yet, as his eyes landed on Monica, something in his expression shifted. His warm demeanor toward the other customers disappeared, replaced by a look of indifference, maybe even irritation. Monica, unaware of the assumptions swirling in Mark's mind, smiled and made her way toward him. "Hi, good afternoon," she greeted him politely. "I was hoping to take a look at some of your new arrivals." Mark didn't return her smile. Instead, he glanced at her clothes, his eyes briefly flicking to her face before looking past her, as though she weren't there. His silence was awkward, hanging in the air for several uncomfortable moments before he finally spoke. "I'm not sure we have anything you'd be interested in," he said flatly. The dismissiveness in his tone was unmistakable, and Monica's initial surprise turned to confusion. She had simply asked to see some new products. What could possibly be wrong with that? Perhaps he misunderstood her request. Trying to maintain her composure, she clarified, "I'm actually looking for a few pieces to update my wardrobe. Could you show me some of the latest collections?" Mark barely looked at her as he responded, "I don't think this is the kind of store you're used to shopping at," he said with a hint of condescension. "There's a place down the street that might be more in line with what you're looking for. It's a little more affordable." Monica's heart sank. There it was, the judgment she had encountered so many times before, based solely on her appearance. She felt the sting of it, but years of experience had taught her how to control her emotions in situations like this. Instead of reacting with anger, she took a deep breath. "I'm quite certain this is the right store for me," she said, keeping her tone measured and calm. "I would just like to see what's available." But Mark was unyielding. His expression hardened, and he stepped out from behind the counter to stand directly in front of her, blocking her path. "Look, I'm going to be honest with you," he said, his voice low and patronizing. "We cater to a certain clientele here, and frankly, I don't think this is the right place for you. I'm trying to save you some time. Maybe you should leave." For a moment, Monica was speechless. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The store she now owned, the store she had poured her time, money, and heart into, was denying her service. And not because she wasn't interested in the products, but because of the color of her skin and the assumptions that came with it. Mark had looked at her and decided that she didn't belong, that she wasn't worthy of the store's attention. A wave of emotions crashed over Monica: anger, disappointment, hurt. But above all, she felt a deep sense of determination. She had worked too hard and come too far to let someone like Mark make her feel small. She was the owner of this store, and she would not be disrespected. Without another word, Monica turned and walked out of the store. Her mind was already racing with the next step she would take. There was a part of her that wanted to march right back in and reveal who she really was. But she knew that would only serve to humiliate Mark. And while he deserved to be held accountable for his actions, Monica wanted to approach the situation in a way that would bring about real change, not just in this one store, but across the entire company. As she walked back to her car, Monica pulled out her phone and made a call to the CEO of the company she had just acquired the chain from. This was not the first time she had faced prejudice, but it would certainly be the last time it happened in one of her stores. The wheels were already in motion for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of this luxury brand. And little did Mark Walters know, his day was about to take a turn he could never have imagined. As Monica drove away from the store, the weight of the encounter sat heavily on her chest. The blatant discrimination she had just experienced wasn't new to her, but that didn't make it any less painful. She had spent her entire career fighting against the kind of ignorance and prejudice that Mark Walters had displayed. And now, it was happening in a store she owned. The irony stung deeply. Monica didn't grow up with privilege. She had earned everything she owned through hard work, determination, and by overcoming countless barriers in an industry dominated by people who often didn't look like her. She remembered, as a young girl, walking past stores like this one, stores that seemed to represent a world she wasn't invited into. But even then, she knew she was destined for something greater. And now, standing on the precipice of real success, she was reminded that no amount of success could fully shield her from the biases of others. Mark Walters' dismissiveness wasn't just about denying her access to a luxury experience. It was about denying her the right to exist in a space he deemed too good for her. His assumptions about her financial status, her background, and even her worth as a customer had been made before she'd said more than a few words. She knew these assumptions weren't just his. They were a reflection of the broader issues that still existed in the retail world and beyond. After making her phone call to Mr. Crawford, the former CEO of the retail chain, Monica drove back to her office to regroup. She had requested a meeting with him and the top executives of the company that afternoon, ensuring they would all be present at the store when she returned. In the meantime, she spent the next few hours going over the company's policies, sales numbers, and internal reviews. She wanted to know exactly how this store, and others like it, were being run. Monica wasn't one to make decisions hastily or out of pure emotion. She prided herself on being thoughtful and strategic, and this situation would be no different. It wasn't just about confronting one manager's racism. It was about addressing a systemic issue that might be lurking beneath the surface of her newly acquired business. She knew that this wasn't just an isolated incident. If Mark felt comfortable treating her this way, he had likely treated others the same. And if he had done it, chances were that other managers within the company had too. As Monica sifted through employee performance reports and customer feedback, a troubling pattern began to emerge. There had been previous complaints about discriminatory practices in the store's hiring processes, though nothing had been formally addressed. There were also a few mentions of customer service discrepancies where people of color reported feeling less welcome or receiving poorer treatment compared to other shoppers. While none of these reports had been severe enough to reach upper management, they were concerning enough to confirm Monica's fears. There was a deeper problem within the company. By the time Monica returned to the store that afternoon, her resolve had only grown stronger. She wasn't just there to confront Mark, she was there to change the culture of the company, starting from the top. When she arrived, she was greeted by Mr. Crawford and several other executives who had flown in from headquarters. They stood outside the store, waiting for her, each of them visibly tense after hearing what had happened. Mr. Crawford, who had overseen the company for many years before stepping down after the sale, was genuinely shocked by the events Monica had described earlier. "I'm so sorry, Monica," Mr. Crawford said, his face filled with regret as they shook hands. "I had no idea something like this was happening in any of our stores. This is completely unacceptable, and I assure you, we'll handle it." Monica gave a small, tight smile. "I appreciate that, Mr. Crawford, but this is bigger than just one incident. I've been looking into some of the internal reviews and customer complaints, and it seems like this is a pattern we need to address on a larger scale." He nodded, his expression serious. "Absolutely. Whatever changes need to be made, we're behind you. I'll personally see to it." The group entered the store together, drawing the attention of both employees and customers. Mark Walters stood behind the counter once again, oblivious to the significance of the group that had just walked in. He offered them a polite smile, likely assuming they were high-profile customers, and stepped forward to assist. "Good afternoon," Mark said smoothly. "How can I help you all today?" Monica didn't respond immediately. She wanted to give him a moment to realize what was happening. When he caught sight of her standing at the back of the group, his smile faltered slightly, but he didn't yet make the connection. "I'm sure you remember me," Monica said, her voice calm but firm. "I was here earlier this morning." Mark blinked, confused for a moment, but then recognition flickered in his eyes. His confident posture wavered as the color drained from his face. "You," he stammered, clearly caught off guard. "Yes, I remember. You were, looking for something in the new arrivals." "That's right," Monica said, "except you didn't seem too eager to help me then. In fact, you asked me to leave." Mark's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His eyes darted toward Mr. Crawford and the other executives, who were watching the exchange with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Monica took a step forward, her eyes never leaving Mark's. "What you didn't know," she continued, "is that I'm the new owner of this entire company. I bought the chain last week, and the way you treated me today, Mark, was not just unprofessional, it was unacceptable." The room fell into a heavy silence. Mark's face flushed red as the reality of the situation sank in. He looked like he was struggling to find something to say, but the shock had rendered him nearly speechless. His eyes darted toward the other executives, as if hoping someone would come to his defense, but no one moved. I had no idea," Mark finally managed to stammer. I didn't realize who you were." Monica held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "That's the point, Mark. You didn't know who I was, but it shouldn't matter. Whether I'm a customer who owns the company or someone off the street, you have no right to treat anyone the way you treated me today." The weight of her words seemed to press down on Mark. He stood frozen, his face pale and his hands trembling slightly as he held onto the counter for support. "I've spoken to Mr. Crawford and the other executives," Monica continued. addressing not just Mark, but the room at large. We are going to make significant changes to the way this company operates. There will be new policies put in place to ensure that all customers are treated with respect, regardless of their appearance, background, or perceived wealth. Discrimination in any form will not be tolerated. She turned to the other executives, nodding toward Mr. Crawford. We will be conducting a thorough review of the company's management and hiring practices. This is not just about addressing what happened here today. It's about making sure that this culture doesn't exist anywhere in our stores. There will be new diversity and inclusion training for every employee, starting with the management. The executives murmured their agreement, clearly shaken by the gravity of the situation. As for you, Mark, Monica said, turning back to the manager, we will be discussing your future with this company. But for now, I want you to understand something. No one should ever feel like they don't belong in any of our stores. That is not the kind of business I run. Mark swallowed hard, his face ashen. He nodded silently, knowing that any defense he could muster would be futile. Monica's words had been spoken with quiet strength, but their impact was undeniable. She had taken what could have been a humiliating moment and turned it into a powerful message about leadership, respect, and the kind of change she intended to bring. And while Mark's day was ruined, Monica's mission was only just beginning. The weight of the moment hung in the air long after Monica finished speaking. Mark Walters, the once confident store manager, now stood frozen, his hands trembling at his sides. His world, which had been meticulously built on assumptions of power and status, was unraveling before his eyes. The gravity of what Monica had revealed, her true identity as the owner of the entire chain of stores, was a blow he could never have anticipated. And now everything he thought he understood about his role, his authority, and even his values was being called into question. Monica watched him closely. Despite the obvious tension in the room, she remained poised, her expression unreadable, but her presence commanding. Her words had been clear, firm, and irrefutable. She wasn't just there to punish Mark. She was there to institute change, real and lasting change. She knew that this incident, as personal as it was not just about her. It was about every person who had ever been denied the dignity and respect they deserved, simply because they didn't fit into someone else's preconceived notion of who belonged. Mr. Crawford, the former CEO, stepped forward, breaking the silence. His voice was quiet, but it carried the authority of someone who had been in leadership long enough to recognize the gravity of the situation. "Mark," he said, his tone devoid of the camaraderie that might have existed before, "we need to have a serious discussion about your future with this company. What happened today reflects poorly on you in the store, but more importantly, it reflects poorly on the values this company is meant to uphold." Mark shifted uncomfortably, still unable to form a coherent response. He had never imagined his career would be jeopardized by something like this. To him, it had seemed like just another day at work. He had made a quick judgment based on the appearance of a customer, something he had done countless times before, without consequence. But today was different. This time, his actions had come back to haunt him in a way he couldn't have predicted. Monica, sensing that the moment was becoming too heavy for the other employees and customers in the store, turned to Mr. Crawford and the other executives. "I think we should move this discussion to a more private setting," she said, her voice calm but authoritative. The group nodded in agreement, and Mr. Crawford gestured for everyone to follow him to the back offices. As they walked through the store, Monica couldn't help but notice the hushed whispers of the employees who had witnessed the exchange. Their faces were a mix of shock, curiosity, and perhaps even a bit of fear. They had just seen their manager, the man who had held authority over them, brought to his knees by the revelation of who Monica really was. Once inside the office, the group gathered around a large conference table. Mark sat at one end, his posture tense and defensive, while Monica and Mr. Crawford sat across from him. The other executives took their seats as well, though they remained silent, clearly deferring to Monica's leadership. For a few moments, no one spoke. The air was thick with tension as everyone waited for Monica to take the lead. When she finally did, her voice was steady and measured. "Mark," she began, "I want to make something very clear. What happened today is not just about a single moment of bad judgment. It's about a culture of discrimination and exclusion that has no place in this company, or anywhere, for that matter. You made assumptions about me based on my appearance, and those assumptions led you to treat me in a way that was not only disrespectful, but harmful. Mark's eyes flickered with a mix of regret and defensiveness. He opened his mouth to respond, but Monica held up a hand, stopping him before he could speak. "I don't want to hear excuses," she said, her tone firm. "This isn't the time for you to justify your actions. What I want to focus on is how we move forward, how we can ensure that this kind of behavior doesn't happen again, to anyone." Mark swallowed hard, nodding slightly. He could feel the weight of his mistakes bearing down on him, and he knew that any attempt to explain himself would only make things worse. Monica continued, her gaze unwavering. "I've been reviewing some of the internal reports from this store and others within the chain, and it's clear that this is not an isolated incident. There have been multiple complaints from customers who felt they were treated unfairly or with less respect because of their background, their appearance, or their perceived financial status. This is a systemic issue, and it's one that needs to be addressed immediately." Mr. Crawford nodded in agreement. "We've always prided ourselves on being a company that offers an exceptional shopping experience to every customer, regardless of who they are or what they look like. Clearly, we've fallen short of that standard, and it's time to make some changes." Monica glanced at Mark, her expression softening slightly. "I don't think you're a bad person, Mark," she said, her voice taking on a more empathetic tone. "But you've been conditioned to see people in a certain way, and that's something that needs to change. We all have biases, but it's our responsibility to recognize them and work against them, especially when we're in positions of authority." Mark nodded again, though this time his expression was less defensive and more thoughtful. He was beginning to understand the depth of the issue and how his actions had contributed to a much larger problem. "We're going to implement new policies across the entire company," Monica continued. "These policies will focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, ensuring that every customer and employee is treated with the respect and dignity they deserve. There will be mandatory training for all employees, starting with management, on how to recognize and combat bias in the workplace." Mr. Crawford leaned forward, adding to Monica's point. "And Mark, as part of this process, we'll need to take a closer look at your leadership style. We want to give you the opportunity to learn from this and grow, but there will be consequences for what happened today." Mark's face fell slightly at the mention of consequences, but he nodded in understanding. He knew he was lucky to still have a chance to make things right. Many other bosses would have fired him on the spot. "We'll be conducting a full review of your performance as manager," Monica said. "In the meantime, you'll be placed on administrative leave while we implement these changes." Mark didn't argue. He knew this was a generous offer, considering the severity of the situation. He also knew that his future with the company depended on his ability to learn from this experience and prove that he could change. As the meeting wrapped up, Monica felt a sense of resolution, but she also knew that the work was far from over. This was just the beginning of a much larger transformation within the company, one that would take time, effort, and dedication to fully achieve. But Monica was ready. She had always been ready. Her entire life had prepared her for moments like this, moments where she could stand up for what was right and make a real difference. Before leaving the office, Monica turned to Mark one last time. "I hope you take this opportunity to reflect, Mark. This isn't just about your career, it's about how you choose to treat people moving forward. We all have a chance to grow and become better. I hope you take that chance." Mark nodded, his expression somber. "I understand," he said quietly. "I'm sorry for what happened, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." Monica gave him a small, encouraging nod before standing up to leave. As she walked out of the store with Mr. Crawford and the other executives, she felt a sense of accomplishment. But more importantly, she felt hopeful. Hopeful that the changes she was implementing would lead to a better future for everyone who walked through the doors of her stores. As they exited the building and stepped into the afternoon sun, Monica glanced at Mr. Crawford, who had been silently supportive throughout the meeting. "You've done an incredible job with this company," she said. "But now it's time for us to take it to the next level, a place where everyone, no matter who they are, feels welcome and respected." Mr. Crawford smiled, his eyes filled with admiration for the woman who had taken his company to new heights. "I couldn't agree more, Monica," he said. "I'm looking forward to seeing where you take us." With that, Monica turned and walked toward her car, her mind already buzzing with ideas for the future. The road ahead was long, but she was more than ready to walk it. Because for Monica James, this wasn't just business, it was personal. And she was determined to leave a legacy that would change the world for the better. The days that followed Monica's confrontation with Mark Walters were a whirlwind of activity. After leaving the flagship store that afternoon, she dove headfirst into the process of reshaping the company's culture. This was more than just a business overhaul, it was a deeply personal mission. Monica knew that the issues of discrimination and bias she had uncovered ran deeper than just one manager's poor behavior. It was a culture that needed changing, and she was determined to lead that change. Back at the company's headquarters, Monica called a series of meetings with the senior leadership team. Her first priority was to ensure that the company would not only survive this scandal, but emerge stronger and more inclusive than ever before. She worked closely with Mr. Crawford and the Human Resources Department to develop new policies that would address the underlying issues she had uncovered. The company would soon implement sweeping reforms, and every employee, from the sales associates to the top executives, would be held to the same high standard of inclusivity and respect. At the heart of these changes was a comprehensive diversity and inclusion initiative. Monica understood that real, lasting change required more than just surface-level fixes. It required a cultural shift, a re-education of the company's workforce on what it meant to treat people fairly, without prejudice or assumptions. She hired a renowned diversity consultant to lead the program, ensuring that the training would be meaningful and not just a formality. Every employee would undergo mandatory training, with a focus on unconscious bias, respectful customer service, and the company's new zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. As she worked on these initiatives, Monica also made time to speak with employees across the chain. She held town hall meetings, both in person and virtually, to hear from the people on the ground. What she found was both heartbreaking and enlightening. There were many employees, like Mark, who had internalized prejudices that they hadn't even been fully aware of. But there were also many who had experienced discrimination firsthand, both from customers and, in some cases, from their own colleagues. These stories moved Monica deeply, reinforcing her determination to make the company a place where everyone felt valued and respected. It was clear that some of the problems stemmed from a lack of accountability at the managerial level. Many employees shared stories of being overlooked for promotions, dismissed when they voiced concerns, or made to feel like they didn't belong in the luxury retail world simply because of their background. Monica knew this had to change. As she continued to gather feedback, Monica began to develop a more nuanced understanding of what needed to be done. It wasn't just about addressing racism, it was about creating a company culture where diversity was celebrated, where differences were seen as strengths, and where everyone had an equal opportunity to succeed. But this would take time. Change, especially on this scale, couldn't happen overnight. Monica was prepared for the long haul, knowing that the road ahead would be challenging. She would face resistance, both from within the company and from external critics who would question her decisions. But she was ready. She had always thrived on challenges, and this one was no different. After several weeks of intense work, it was time for Monica to return to the flagship store, the very place where her journey as the company's owner had taken such an unexpected turn. But this time, she wasn't going in anonymously. This time, she was returning as the face of change. The day of the visit was important not just for Monica, but for the entire company. Word had spread throughout the chain about what had happened with Mark Walters, and employees and managers alike were eager to see how the new policies would be implemented. Monica's return to the flagship store wasn't just a symbolic gesture. It was a statement that things were different now, and that no one would be left behind or judged unfairly. As Monica pulled up to the store, she noticed a few changes right away. For one, the exterior had been updated with new signage that highlighted the company's commitment to diversity and inclusivity. The message was clear from the moment customers walked in. This store is for everyone. She stepped out of her car, feeling a sense of calm determination. This wasn't about proving a point anymore. It was about creating the kind of company she had always envisioned. As she walked through the front doors, she was greeted by a familiar face. Mark Walters, no longer the confident manager who had dismissed her weeks ago, stood near the entrance, looking noticeably humbled. He had been allowed to return to work after completing the company's new training program, but he was no longer the manager. Monica had reassigned him to a different role, one with less authority and more direct customer interaction. It was part of his rehabilitation process, and Monica hoped it would help him grow. "Good afternoon, Miss James," Mark said quietly as she approached. His voice was respectful, though tinged with a bit of nervousness. "Hello, Mark," Monica replied, giving him a polite nod. She could see the weight of everything that had happened reflected in his posture, but she also saw something else, a willingness to learn, to be better. "How are things going?" she asked, genuinely curious. Mark hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "It's been an adjustment," he admitted. "But I've learned a lot, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue working here." Monica nodded, satisfied with his response. "That's good to hear. I hope you're finding the changes we're making to be positive." "I am," he said quickly. "I realize now how important it is to treat every customer with the same level of respect, regardless of anything else. It's been eye-opening." "I'm glad," Monica said. "That's the kind of attitude we need in this company." After their brief conversation, Monica continued through the store, taking in the changes that had been made. The staff was more diverse than it had been before, with several new hires from various backgrounds. The customer service had improved as well. Employees were more attentive, polite, and eager to help. It was clear that the training had made a significant impact. As Monica made her way to the back of the store, she met with the new store manager, a young woman named Amara, who had been promoted from another location. Amara was the embodiment of the future Monica wanted for the company: confident, capable, and passionate about creating a welcoming environment for all customers. "Miss James," Amara said with a bright smile as she extended her hand, "it's such an honor to finally meet you." "The honor is mine, Amara," Monica replied, shaking her hand warmly. "I've heard great things about you. How are things going here?" "Everything is going well, thanks to your leadership and the new direction we're taking," Amara said, her eyes filled with genuine admiration. "The changes you've implemented have made a world of difference. The staff is more engaged, and the customers are noticing the improvements." Monica smiled, feeling a surge of pride. This was exactly what she had hoped for. The company was evolving, and it was evolving in the right direction. As Monica and Amara continued to talk, a customer approached, a middle-aged man who had been browsing the store. He looked hesitant at first, but then smiled warmly at the two women. "Excuse me," he said, his voice polite. "I just wanted to say thank you. I've been shopping here for years, and I can tell there's something different now. It feels more welcoming. I don't know what you've done, but it's working." Monica and Amara exchanged a glance, both of them smiling at the customer's kind words. "Thank you for noticing," Monica said. "We've been working hard to make this a place where everyone feels at home." The man nodded, clearly appreciative. "Well, it's paying off. I'll definitely be coming back." As he walked away, Monica felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was why she had fought so hard, why she had refused to let that first encounter with Mark define her experience as the owner of the company. She had turned a moment of discrimination into an opportunity for growth, not just for herself, but for the entire organization. Monica knew that the journey wasn't over. There was still much work to be done, and she was prepared to face whatever challenges came next. But for now, she allowed herself to take in the moment when she realized that change, real change, was possible. Because in that store, on that day, it wasn't just about luxury products and high-end shopping. It was about respect, inclusion, and a sense of belonging. And that, Monica knew, was far more valuable than anything money could buy. The quiet satisfaction Monica felt walking through the store that day wasn't just about the success of the changes she'd implemented. It was deeper, more personal, like the culmination of a lifetime of hard work, resilience, and the refusal to give in to obstacles, both seen and unseen. The store, once a symbol of elitism and exclusion, now embodied something she had envisioned all along: inclusivity, respect, and growth. But she knew, as all leaders do, that progress is a continual journey, not a destination. After her meeting with Amara and the brief encounter with the appreciative customer, Monica made her way to her office. She had set up a small workspace in the back of the flagship store, a place where she could quietly observe the store's operations while staying connected to her larger vision for the company. As she sat down at her desk, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Growing up, Monica had never imagined herself as the owner of a luxury retail chain. Her ambitions were always high, but they weren't defined by material success. Her parents had instilled in her the values of hard work, humility, and integrity. They taught her that no matter how much she achieved, it was her character and her impact on others that would truly matter. This lesson had been at the core of everything she had done, from starting her first business to acquiring this chain of stores. Yet, despite all her achievements, the confrontation with Mark Walters had reminded her that the fight for equity and respect was far from over. The discrimination she had faced, even as a successful entrepreneur, had reaffirmed what she had always known, that racism, prejudice, and exclusion were not just problems of the past. They were deeply ingrained issues that persisted in subtle and overt ways, and it was her responsibility, as a leader and as a woman of color, to confront them head-on. Monica opened her laptop and began typing up a detailed plan. While the changes she had already implemented were a step in the right direction, she knew there was more to be done. She envisioned a company-wide initiative that would not only improve customer experiences, but also create opportunities for people from diverse backgrounds to thrive within the company. This wasn't just about enforcing new rules. It was about building a culture that would stand the test of time, a culture that would set an example for the entire industry. Her plan involved several key components. Diversity in hiring and promotion. Monica wanted to ensure that the company's workforce reflected the diversity of the customers it served. This meant actively recruiting from underrepresented communities, providing mentorship opportunities, and creating clear pathways for advancement. No longer would the company be a place where only a select few had the chance to rise through the ranks. Comprehensive bias training. The mandatory bias training she had introduced was just the beginning. Monica wanted to make this an ongoing part of the company's culture. Employees would not only learn how to recognize and combat their own biases, but also how to create inclusive environments for both colleagues and customers. This would be a continuous process, with regular assessments and improvements to the training program. Community outreach and partnerships. Monica believed that the company had a responsibility to give back to the communities that had long been overlooked by luxury retailers. She planned to establish partnerships with local organizations, schools, and mentorship programs, providing internships, scholarships, and job training for young people from underserved backgrounds. This wasn't just about charity. It was about creating opportunities and fostering talent. Inclusive marketing and representation. Monica wanted the company's advertising and branding to reflect the values of inclusivity and diversity. She planned to feature models of different races, body types, and backgrounds in their campaigns, sending a clear message that luxury was for everyone. The company's marketing materials would no longer cater to just one demographic. They would celebrate the beauty and strength of all people. As she wrote, Monica's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from the diversity consultant she had hired to lead the bias training. They had completed the first round of assessments and had some promising feedback. Employees were beginning to engage more deeply with the material, and some had even come forward to share their own stories of bias and exclusion within the company. It wasn't easy to hear, but it was exactly what Monica needed: Honest, open conversations that would lead to real change. She smiled, feeling a surge of hope. The work was hard, and there would undoubtedly be more obstacles ahead, but she was ready for them. She always had been. Later that week, Monica gathered her executive team for a meeting. The room was filled with a mix of familiar faces, some who had been with the company long before she acquired it, and new hires who reflected the diversity she was striving to achieve. Amara, now a rising star in the company, sat beside Monica, ready to contribute her ideas. Monica stood at the front of the room, her presence commanding but warm. She had never been the kind of leader who ruled with an iron fist. She believed in collaboration, in bringing people together to work toward a shared vision. But today, she needed to be firm. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady. "As you know, the past few weeks have been a turning point for this company. We've faced challenges, we've uncovered hard truths, and we've made significant changes. But this is just the beginning." The room was quiet, attentive. "When I first bought this company, I knew it was a great business," Monica continued. "But I also knew that we had the potential to be more than just a luxury brand. We have the potential to lead in how we treat our customers, our employees, and the communities we serve." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We've taken steps in the right direction, but there's more work to be done. I'm committed to making this company a place where everyone feels welcome, respected, and valued, and that starts with all of us in this room." Monica outlined her plan, detailing each component and explaining how it would be implemented. She made it clear that this wasn't optional. These changes were necessary for the company's survival and growth. The world was changing, and businesses that didn't adapt would be left behind. As she spoke, she could see the reactions of her team, some nodding in agreement, others looking a bit uncertain. She knew that change was hard, especially for those who had been in the company for years and were used to doing things a certain way. But she also knew that the future demanded something different, and she was confident that her team would rise to the challenge. After the meeting, Amara approached Monica with a smile. "That was inspiring," she said. "I've never worked for a company that's so committed to making real change." Monica returned her smile, feeling a sense of pride. "It's not going to be easy, but I know we can do it," she said, "and we'll do it together." Over the next few months, the company began to transform in ways that were both visible and subtle. The stores became more welcoming, the staff more engaged, and the customers more diverse. Sales numbers, which had initially dipped after the public scandal surrounding Mark Walters, began to climb as word spread about the company's new direction. Customers appreciated the changes, and many returned to the stores, bringing new business with them. One day, Monica received a letter in the mail. It was from a young woman who had attended one of the company's community outreach events. She wrote about how she had grown up feeling like luxury brands weren't meant for people like her. But after hearing Monica speak about inclusivity and seeing the changes in the company, she felt inspired. She was now pursuing a career in fashion, something she had never considered possible before. Monica read the letter with tears in her eyes. This was why she had fought so hard. This was why she had taken that first step into the store all those weeks ago. Despite the rejection she faced, it was about more than just business. It was about creating opportunities, breaking down barriers, and giving people the chance to see themselves in places they had once been excluded from. And as Monica folded the letter and placed it on her desk, she knew that the future was bright. Not just for her company, but for all the people who would walk through its doors, knowing that they belonged. In the end, Monica had turned a moment of pain into a movement of progress, a new beginning for everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Click on the video now to watch. We appreciate your support, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.